to get through. So welcome and good morning, and of course afternoon for those joining us from New Zealand. My name is Adam Beck. I'm Executive Director for the Smart Cities Council for our Australia and New Zealand region. I'd like to start by acknowledging the First Nations people as the original inhabitants of the land on which I'm participating in this meeting today. I'm based here in Brisbane, and I recognise the country north and south of the Brisbane River as the home of both the Turrbal and Jagera nations, and I pay deep respect to the elders past, present and future. Some short housekeeping matters before we start. Everyone's on mute upon entry. That's how we've set it up. However, we certainly encourage dialogue throughout when we get to those moments in the session, but also just making sure that we respect any background noise or disturbances we might have, and exercise the mute button. Use the chat box as well. Please ask any questions, share any resources. We're recording this session, so you can go back and take a look if you or other colleagues weren't able to join. And as I mentioned, tapping on a keyboard, whether it's a smart device or on your computer, that will be necessary if you'd like to participate that way in our polls throughout. In the chat box, if you wouldn't mind dropping in your name, organisation, maybe add your city, so we can sort of see where we are geographic-wise. That would be great. Just pop it into the chat box. It's potentially going to be a large group, so going around doing intros will not be conducive to meeting our time commitment. For those that are potentially new to the Future of Place project, what is that? Well, you can find out more if you head to futureofplace.global. It is a project that the Smart Cities Council is running for the next couple of years, and we are exploring the evolving relationship between people, place, technology and data, and what that might mean, what has been happening, and of course shaping what it might be. And this roundtable today is part of that project. The goals, exploring those changes and evolving relationships, sharing knowledge and insights, providing guidance. We're looking to sort of document some sort of advice and support through a handbook we think that we'll be creating, which ultimately we hope will influence and enhance policy and also our professional practice. That handbook is going to be 2 years in the making. We're in our first phase at the moment, year one, which is discovery. A lot of questions, a lot of dialogue, a lot of sharing. Our second year will then be sort of putting pen to paper. We're using a number of forums and engagements to help with that discovery phase. Every month we have a discovery session, a formal discovery session. We've locked those in out till October this year. You can see those on the website, and briefly up here on the screen you'll see the different types of topics and thematic areas that we're sort of looking to unpack, that real sort of intersection, as I said, between people, place, technology and data, and there's a lot in that. You can follow us on all those socially things that are out there. You'll find us, Future of Place, and we'll be coming together for a day. If you're lucky enough to be in Brisbane on Wednesday, the 25th of August, we'd love for you to join us at the Future of Place Summit. We will also be streaming a number of parts of that. So head to the website for more info. And while you're there, you may want to subscribe for our weekly update if you have a little bit of room left in your inbox. This is the second of 3 roundtables that we have in a series. Our first roundtable was last month, which was around e-mobility and city design. Today, we're going to be tackling artificial intelligence and city design. And next month, of course, many of our favourite topics, 5G and city design and what that might be or what that might look like. So join us for that if you are interested. Again, the website futureofplace.global. The topic, artificial intelligence and city design. I always put two images up that represent the topic that we're going to talk about today, and I don't think that there is a more polarizing, at opposite end of the spectrum kind of issue than artificial intelligence, full of robots and automated things, but really and hopefully at the heart of it, people, and the way we shape our places and spaces and cities and services and infrastructure for the ultimate, to the ultimate benefit of people, us. So looking forward to this this conversation that we're going to have. It'll be two-way today. Knowledge sharing is a key goal for this session, conversation, and ultimately for us, selfishly, for the Future of Place project, identifying maybe some priority areas. In my very short time researching artificial intelligence and city design, I've identified that it's pretty early in maturity in our dialogue and our understanding and research. Certainly a lot of AI research in other sectors and markets, but of course helping us to go through that today in collaboration with us is Albert Biffet from the University of Waikato from New Zealand. Albert, I met just a couple of months ago. Our director in New Zealand, Janet McBool, has a long-standing relationship with Albert, so I have it on good advice that Albert, you were the person to come and join us for this to provide some expert commentary. So what I'd like to do with that is stop sharing my screen and hand over to you. Thank you so much for joining it, Albert, to kick us off for this roundtable.
Great, thank you so much. So let me share my screen. So yeah, just to start the conversation, yeah, I would like to mention maybe 3 points of artificial intelligence and city design. Maybe I'd like to start talking about what is AI. I think it's quite important first to know what we are talking about. Then I'd like to mention some applications of AI in terms of city design. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit what we are doing at the University of Waikato in terms of artificial intelligence, and especially with this new institute that is called Te Ipu o Te Mahara Artificial Intelligence Institute at the University of Waikato. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's quite a specific topic that is really controversial. No? So sometimes we can see very positive things, sometimes negative things. So I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion about how AI can help us. So let's start. So what is AI? So there are many definitions on AI, and you can see many people looking at AI as different perspective. For me, I really like this definition of the European Commission. That I think it's quite simple, but basically what it's saying is AI is nothing more than a collection of technologies that combine data, algorithms, and computing power. It's a very simple definition, but I think it helps a lot to know what AI can do and what AI cannot do. So AI cannot do anything without data, it cannot do anything without algorithms, and cannot do anything without computing power. So it's very important to understand this. So, and I think this is also something that is going to help us also to realize what are the risks and what are the future potential options of AI. So just to start, so let's look at this. Now let's look at data, algorithms, and computing power. So data is really important, and we can see that AI is not possible without data, and yeah, and this is why big data is so important. The success of AI, especially of deep learning, is something that appeared once we had a lot of data, this big data, and when we had this huge computational power. It was not a problem of lacking algorithms or methods. No, the problem was of lacking data and lacking computational power. So this is why all the data is really so important in artificial intelligence. And then if you look at who are the organizations, who are the countries living on AI, are the ones that they have access to data. So yeah, this is why the main competitors in AI right now are US and China. And the main organizations that are able to push in terms of AI are the companies that they have access to these large quantities of data, like Google with TensorFlow, Facebook with PyTorch. So yeah, it's something that I think that we need to be conscious of the importance of data, no? And especially when we are going to look at city design, also getting access to data is the most important thing. No? We cannot have AI that is not using data. So the second important thing are algorithms. So once we have the data, now we need to do something with that. No, we need to make predictions. We need to get patterns. Basically, we want to get some knowledge. And for that, yeah, algorithms are really, really important. So what are algorithms? In this case, yeah, what we do is that we build, let's say, models. For example, classification is a very, very basic task in machine learning. And the idea basically is we have a lot of data points, a lot of examples, and then these examples have something that we can learn, like a label. For example, this is an example. Imagine that we have a website and we want to learn if visitors are customers or not. So if we think manually, so how this works. So let's say an expert user is going to learn with experience over years what could be a customer and what could not be a customer. So what we are doing here is that we are automating this with data. So we have the data, and from there we can build a model that can separate, can distinguish between different classes. And this is something that is very, very useful in decision making. We want to be able to make predictions. And then how we do these predictions with the minimum amount of error is something very, very important. So yeah, this is why all of these algorithms, especially these new deep learning algorithms, are quite useful because they are allowing us to do things that, yeah, 10 years ago were not possible. So that allow us to new possibilities. And finally, yeah, let me mention the computing power. This is something that is quite relevant. And because we may think that AI is something that is, let's say, cheap, but it's important to know that is really consuming a lot of energy, a lot of CO2. And this is something that we are realizing right now, that we are able to build these amazing, amazing models that are really, really accurate, but we are consuming a lot of energy. So yeah, there was this article that was mentioning that, yeah, now building an AI model, one of these powerful methods with millions of parameters, could take the same CO2 like, yeah, like the life of a car, more than 5 times the life of a car. So we are talking about really, really a lot of CO2. So this is something also that I think that when we are talking about AI, we need also to talk about this. It's not only about what AI can do, but also about the resources that AI can use. And yeah, I like to talk a little bit about the applications of AI. So because yeah, we'll see that AI has a very positive side, but also yeah, we can discuss about some negative issues. So let me start talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. So as you know, in smart cities, this is really, really important, how we are able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you know, they are these 17, and they are divided into 3 main parts: society, economy, environment. So it could be quite easy to say that AI is going to help in all of them, and AI is going to be so nice, and AI is perfect technology, and we need to use AI for everything. But yeah, in this paper that I show you, this is the role of artificial intelligence, in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The authors, what they discover is that it's not always positive what AI can do. So it's quite good in the sense that, for example, they're measuring about all these sustainable goals, and they are saying that 79% are positive, and maybe only around 35 maybe negative. It's quite interesting to see why this is happening. So for example, in terms of environment, it's clear that AI is something that can help how we improve how we are dealing with environment. It has this part of the resources that the AI is using. So maybe this is the only negative part, but in general, AI can be very, very helpful. In terms of society, AI also can be very, very helpful. And maybe the thing that AI could be more, let's say, challenging is in terms of economy. And this is because, the AI could cause a digital divide between the countries, the cities, the people that can have access to this technology, and the people that cannot have access to that. So I think that AI at the end is a technology and can be used in a good way or can be used in a bad way. But I think it's really important that we look at the risk of AI and we try to get good at that. No? So in this sense, for example, education is so important because if the people is not trained on these technologies, again, we are going to create a digital divide that is going to be quite important. So just to talk about some specific applications for design of smart cities. So I'd like to mention this work of Facelift. So this is a work from the group of Daniele Kerchi and Nokia Bell Labs at Cambridge in the UK. Basically what they did is that they look at Boston. And in Boston, they were looking at all the areas in Boston and they were asking people what was their feeling about the city. Did they have a positive feeling or a negative about the place? Okay, and then once they get this data, so you can see in the map, there is a blue dots and red dots, and the blue ones are the positive ones and the red are the negative ones. And then what they did is that looking at the negative ones, they were, this is what we can see there. So they were looking at the reasons why the people were not happy with that, why they think that this place is ugly. And then, looking at the features, we can have a way to measure what are the factors that influence that the people don't like the city. No? And then an interesting thing is that they were using AI to create then a positive picture of the same place, changing things so that makes it more nice for the people. So that's a good way, let's say, to use AI to see how we can improve the city design. And finally, I'd like to mention also this project of Google, of Alphabet. They have this company, this Sidewalk Labs, and they are working on creating machine learning tools for helping designing cities. Again, this is done with huge quantities of data and then optimizing certain parameters. That's the thing. Remember that AI is basically a tool that is using data, applying some algorithms, and using computational power to be able to provide these outputs. And just to finish, let me only mention what we are doing at the University of Waikato on the Ipu Temahara Artificial Intelligence Institute. So this is an institute that was launched 2 weeks ago. So it's really, really something new. We have associated research groups, groups that work on machine learning, groups that work on robotics, groups that work on cybersecurity, on real-time machine learning, on adaptive machine learning. And we also have this NVIDIA DGX A100. This is something also that we bought that 1 month ago, and this is the fastest AI supercomputer in New Zealand for doing this type of machine learning and especially deep learning that is based on GPUs. We work across disciplines, so we are very, very interdisciplinary. We have this big project that is called TAYAO. This is an environmental data science project of 7 years that we have with University of Auckland, Canterbury, Becca, and MedService. And now we are partnering with Scion to how we apply machine learning on real time to analyze data from sensors, in this case it was in forest, to look at the quality and sustainability of water. And finally, we are really strong in open source software. So we are dealing really with green AI. So we have these softwares like Moa and River that are specific for doing fast AI that uses a small amount of resources. But we are very well known internationally for Weka. So Weka is a software that has more than 10 million downloads, has more than 25,000 citations, means more than 25,000 applications of the software in many applications. And yeah, I think this is something that we are very, very proud of. Many people that are using this software to do machine learning and AI. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. That was my introduction to some thoughts about what is artificial intelligence and city design, and I hope that this is going to be useful for the conversation.
Albert, thanks so much for that. I might just get you to, yeah, that would be great. I just want to quickly start off by getting a sense of who we have in the room with us before we jump in. Would everyone mind opening up on a relevant device in a browser, menti.com? You can also use those black squiggly sort of bars to the left there, which is the QR code that we're all very familiar with now. Scan on that, it'll pop up. Menti.com, the code you put in 2413. And what I would like to do is jump in and get a sense of who we are in the room. The first question I'd just like to quickly ask relates to your sort of primary profession. There we go. It's starting to move about a little bit now. What is your sort of primary practicing profession at the moment? I've got a couple of examples in there around the sort of city shaping and built environment professions, whether it's policy making, environment and sustainability, urban design and planning, and so on. Also acknowledging that, of course, there are certainly many other professions that may not be listed there, and I've put the other category. So keen to get folks to quickly jump in so we can get a bit of a baseline there. While that's happening, Albert, I have a question around AI strategy. Australia has a national AI strategy. What is the situation in New Zealand? Is this an issue, or I should also say, is this an opportunity that is being sort of stewarded with solid national leadership and policy in New Zealand?
Yes, now I think that's quite important. So now the government is working on the design of this New Zealand AI strategy. This is something that's going to appear this year. And I think that, yeah, this is a good opportunity to decide what are the strategic vision of what AI can do in a country. And I think that, yeah, in this case, yeah, we have the example of Australia. So I can imagine that the strategy in New Zealand is going to look closely to the one in Australia. But yeah, this is something that all the countries right now, they have more or less a national AI strategy. And it's quite important because there are basically two ways to do this type of strategy. One is to focus more in industry, or the other is more to focus on research. And I think that's something that is quite important, depending if the country prefers to be more a country using AI or prefers to be a country more developing AI. And for me, that's important because AI is something that is a technology that is quite important. And I think that countries need to be the ones developing AI and having the control of these technologies, no? Because I don't think it could be good for the country to be, yeah, only using AI and not be the ones that are, let's say, in control of the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And friends, for those that have got access to a device and keyboard, we'll be asking a couple of questions along the way. But I'd like to also highlight two other ways in which you can sort of interact and be part of this roundtable. You can take yourself off mute, switch your camera on, introduce yourself and ask a question of Albert or indeed to the group. And also you have that sort of function there in the chat box to share any thoughts, comments, or indeed questions. I've got a follow-up question here just quickly. I'd like to know where the group is at with respect to AI. A couple of sort of just quick responses here. I'd love to see where you might be at. You've never touched it, you never will. You're tinkering with it, you're all in, and you're doing pilots and scaling. Maybe you're waiting for the right time. I don't know what the right time is, or maybe you're just a sort of a keen urbanist and observer only. Would love to get some quick responses there. Got a lot of observers, which is interesting. Albert, we've got a question coming through here from Rhett. What cities have AI controlling something physical? What does controlling something physical maybe look like? Let's start there.
Yes, that's I can imagine that should be. So my understanding is that yeah, once we have data and once we are starting to make decisions based on that, then yeah, then we are using AI. No, and it's clear that, for example, in smart cities, AI is quite related to IoT, in the sense that, yeah, this is a way of having a lot of information on real time. And I think that cities, they are already using these technologies in terms, for example, of yeah, monitoring the traffic of the cities. So this is something that is already, and then, yeah, this is something that can be used to decide what could be the most optimal path to travel around the city. There are other applications as it could be, for example, how to optimize infrastructure in the city, how to optimize energy, how to optimize water distribution. So there are many things that AI can be used to that. The idea is to build on data, and then from there try to learn what is the best way to do that. Of course, AI can also be used for surveillance, so can also be used to control. And then, yeah, this is also a controversial topic. If we look at countries that they are using some scores for people, and then they are also using these techniques to control people. So yeah, there are many uses of AI. For me, in principle, the idea is that, yeah, we have all of these large quantities of data, and then we can use this to make better predictions. So in terms of cities infrastructures design, yes, there are many options.
Rhett, a great question. And Albert and everyone, you've seen I've just switched screens here. This is a research paper that I came across. I'm just going to drop the link into the chat box now. Manji has put a question there around controlling people. That's a bit concerning. We will get into some of the pitfalls around AI. The diagram I've put up here in terms of sharing on the screen, it's quite an interesting paper. There's few that I've found relating to urban planning and city shaping particular and AI. This is an interesting research paper. If you ever go into it, they used quite an extensive analysis of social media, particularly tweets, to get a sense of sentiment and interest and level of positivity and negativity around AI. But the other thing they did is they sort of pulled out and identified the suite of AI related technologies. And you can see here on the screen, these yellow boxes are the relevant, what they call AI related technologies, or maybe that's the technology that's being used where AI is sort of a function. But you can see here a couple of sort of clusters. The blue lines are the most are sort of the stronger, more commonly referenced suite of technologies like robotics, something very physical, something very much, of course, emerging in manufacturing and construction and the like. Drones, of course, being another one here that you can see, but you then sort of start seeing a lot of gaps around there. So I suspect that our field of city shaping, placemaking, urban design is certainly one that's really yet to see a lot of use cases or applications. In the other research I did work through, Albert, as you rightly mentioned, a lot of cases around CCTV, public place, safety, and also transportation. Transportation seems to be quite a
yes,
quite a significant one. So I suppose there's sort of a lot of you know, yet wait to sort of see what happens in this field. I was keen to know, Albert, and I'm going to put up on the screen here our next question. And Albert, I know you're not necessarily a sort of like a pure urbanist here, but it starts to sort of, for me, ask the question, well, where might AI and the opportunity of AI sort of really lie when it comes to the future of our cities and place and the built environment? Is it more understanding how our cities and place are performing and interacting? Is it about shaping them, proactively shaping them? Is it sort of about optimizing? Is it about the user experience and engaging place? So I sort of put that question up there. We can sort of see what's happening now with responses based on our audience's level of understanding and where you are at your journey. This is, of course, merely a bit of a temperature test of where you think the opportunity might lie. Albert, some thoughts, reactions to what you're seeing up here?
Yes, that's quite interesting. So it seems that, yeah, the first one is optimizing place, basically management. And I think it makes a lot of sense, because maybe what is important right now is to give a good quality of life to all the citizens right now. So in this case, I think how we can optimize how things are already being managed is really, really important. So I think that's AI basically can help in two things. No? So one is how we manage what we already have, and the second one is how we design new things for the future. No? For designing new things for the future, yeah, I think we really need to understand how things are done, and in this case, yeah, we really need to understand what are the feelings, ideas, thoughts of people, and then the best way to do that is to recollect data. So again, we need to see what's the best way that we need to interview, to ask what are the things that make people, let's say, happier in terms of smart cities. And then in this case, I think it's really, really important to get the right data. So it's really important to see what is the data that we need to collect, and then from there, try to get that. I think this is something that could be really, really helpful in the sense that maybe before the option of getting the opinion of people were only limited to ask some samples with, yeah, but now we can really ask everybody. No? So I think that there's a huge technological advantage there, that having these large quantities of data, we can really, really improve how we do things. So I think that, again, it's really good to, AI is really good for now, how we manage things, but also can be very, very good on how we design things for the future, if we really understand what are the things that are working and what are the things that are not working.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to pick up on the comment, well, a partial comment that came through there from Manji around sort of concern and AI. Let me bring back up on the screen the report I was referring to earlier on, and this may be a little bit hard for some depending on what type of device or screen you have. This is an interesting one of the many interesting parts of the paper that talk about sentiment. This is across Australia only. And you have sentiment around positive sentiment around AI, negative sentiment, neutral sentiment. And you can sort of see state by state there. And it's quite interesting. I'm here in Brisbane, I'm based in Queensland. Of the, I think it was 42,000 tweets that they analysed, 92% were positive sentiments, 5% negative, 3% neutral. So kind of a significant percentage there in terms of positive. And then you get down to places, New South Wales, 69% positive. And you get to, places like Victoria, almost 50% positive, 50% negative. Albert, what can you share with us around sentiment, perception? How much of a handbrake is this going to be on the advancement of AI? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and of course for our audience to pop any questions in the chat box as well. Thanks, Albert.
Yeah. So my personal experience with that is that that depends on what the people understand with AI. So usually what I see is that in places where AI is used as a synonym of data science, where basically AI is nothing more than data, how we can use data to improve things, then people have a positive view. In places where AI is more related to science fiction and maybe to robots and what these films appear, then maybe in that case they think of AI as more as a negative way. So I think that, yeah, there are these two things. Another important thing is I think this is something that is very important on AI is the bias. So as I said, AI is based on data. So if data is biased, then all the predictions that we're going to make, all the knowledge that we're going to obtain is going to be biased. And this is something that I think when we talk about the risk of AI, I think the main risk are this, is how we implement algorithms that are able to detect the bias and not to use that. No? And in this case, yeah, it's so important because if we don't do that, then we can really, really discriminate people by these algorithms. The solution for that is quite interesting. Is something that is called explainable AI. It's something that appears recently, and there's a lot of research on that. So the idea of explainable AI is that every time that we make a prediction, what we're going to do is that we are going to also give the explanation of that prediction. And there we can see if there is a discrimination or not, no? Because maybe if we are using one attribute to decide something, maybe this is a discrimination. No? So this is why it's very important that we need to know not only the prediction, but also the explanation of how this prediction is made. And I think this is something that is becoming very, very important and is really, really important for having a right use of AI.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Sarah, Stace, you've got your hand up. Would love to see you and introduce yourself. And what would you like to share?
Hi. Yes, Sarah Stace. I'm at Transport for New South Wales. I did miss a bit of the earlier discussion, so I apologise if I'm repeating anything. But just on that question of sort of bias and the underlying data that goes into AI models. I do have a specific example that I worked on myself that was problematic, specifically around place. So I developed a video recognition model and discovered that the data set that we were using to do our training on had some problems with it. So we were looking for, we'd purchased a pre-labeled data set that was looking for construction worker. But when we actually looked under the hood, under what was that pre-labeled data that said construction work, of course, you had high vis and hard hat, etc., tick, tick, tick. But eventually got to a point where it's showing some kids doing child labour with pickaxes. And it just really got me thinking, well, hang on, A, do we want that kind of data in our data set? No. But who decided what that label was going to be? So I think that there's some some opportunity to have, I suppose, ethical data sets that you're building off, and who decides what that ethical component is, let alone obviously the quality of your model. But sometimes I think we do put this kind of put AI up as this, it can solve a whole lot of problems, but you do need to make sure that that underlying data is correct. A second example I can give is that we have been developing a machine learning model around is done in New South Wales as part of a Transport for New South Wales. And again, we've relied very much on the telco that's provided that data, who've already pre-processed that. So we have to take a leap of faith that the information they're providing is correct and without that bias. And I think that underlying data can be very, very problematic.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Albert.
Yeah, that's really a very good point. I think that we need to start thinking seriously on how to certify algorithms, or how we should certify these machine learning, these AI systems, in the sense that we really need to be sure that they are making the right decisions, and that means that they are using the right data. So it's really important to certify that the data is fine, that there are nothing strange there, and also the algorithms, that they are not using information that should not be using. No, if it's clear, if they are using any of these features that they can use to discriminate, it's clear that. But I think that's very important for this, because maybe sometimes the people are thinking of these AI algorithms as something like black boxes that, yeah, we don't need to look what is inside. No, I think we really need to be sure that they are performing in the right way. So that means that someone needs to look at that, look at the predictions, how they are making the predictions, and how is the data, and how is the algorithm doing.
Sarah, thanks for the question. Albert, thank you for the response. I've put up here a little sort of open field word cloud. Would like to get sort of everyone's really key concerns or sort of interests here. I would like to, as much as possible, apply a built environment, a place, an urban planning lens to this. We would like to see where it is we think we sort of might need to really work on. And it makes me wonder, Albert, have you seen anything that indicates that particular professions or sectors are more relaxed and sort of, you know, that they have a greater level of acceptance of AI? Are there particular sectors showing more extreme caution? I know it's based on decision making, and, you know, I suppose risk management is a key part of this. But is there anything there around sort of professions or practices or sectors that are more embracing this than others that you've seen?
Yeah, so what I see is that the people that can benefit from data, from the usage of data, these are the ones that are really using AI technology. So let's say, yeah, I like this example that someone mentioned, that remember before the internet, we had these organizations that they were selling. Once the internet arrived, you could be like an internet company only having a website, but that was not really an internet company. No? So to be an internet company, you really need to design things that are around the internet. So like, it's not the same a bookshop that has a website that Amazon selling books. So on AI is the same. So the organizations that are really built on data, these are the ones that have a big advantage, because are the ones that are already AI on the core. And I think this is really important. It's not the same to be a traditional organization using AI that being an organization that has data as the core business and is really using data to get more data to improve how they're doing things. Huh? So I think that if you look at this is why these internet companies as Google, Facebook, all of these, the Chinese ones, European ones, they are really interested in getting data. No? And this is why they are giving services for free to get the data, because this is what they need to build these AI systems. No? So yeah, that's.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at some of the concerns that are coming up here on the screen. you know, sort of the overuse of AI, its use in the way that potentially causes harm. Similar to cybersecurity and data privacy, there are rightly significant concerns. We have, in some cases, excellent sort of policy and strategy, excellent international standards that very clearly articulate how we should approach some of these things. With all of that, Albert, it still seems like a human is involved in making decisions, applying it, procuring it, and those sort of safeguards are often, or potential safeguards are often sort of bypassed. How much is this going to come down to humans using and investing? I mean, AI is a tool, okay? I know there is ideas out there that AI can be done to you, but there is sort of a moment where a local authority, a chief planner, an architect applies AI as a tool to a project. Talk about the future of capability development and education for AI.
Yeah.
Where are we at with that?
Yeah, I think this is really the most important thing, in the sense that this technology is really powerful, and then this could create a digital divide between the people, organizations that have access to this technology and the organizations that they don't have access to this. So this is why I really like this idea of investing on AI for everyone. So we really need to allow people to use this technology, so that not only, let's say, the big organizations or the rich companies, rich people can access this. It should be something that everybody should benefit, not only strict. So in this sense, I think it's really important to start discussing this, and I think it's really important to give some education to everybody, so everybody can understand what AI is, what AI is not, and what are the risks of the usage of AI, because it's not a matter of the algorithms. It's a matter of the usage of them. It's not a matter of responsible algorithms. It's a matter of responsible people using these algorithms. So I think we really need to focus on what are the responsible uses of AI and what are not. And then, as you can see on the comments, there are so many applications that, we really don't want. But you can use AI to censor people, to do many things that, this are usages of AI that are bad. At the same time, there are so many things that AI can help on improving how we do things, can improve how we do education, how we design cities, how we, there are so many. And I saw there is also this mentioning of the singularity. This is also something that at the moment still is quite science fiction, but the idea is that there will be a moment that these AI systems may be smarter than humans, and then they can, let's say, overtake us. But this is also something interesting in the sense that, first, I think that still we are very far away of that. And the second one is that it's not clear that these methods, these AI, could be worse than us. Maybe they could optimize other things that we are not optimizing, and maybe in this sense, they could help us to make things more sustainable and things more better. But this is something that is more science fiction still.
Albert, Paul has put in the chat box there, what might be your views around how this is playing out in China? I mean, we've all seen those articles about, social credit scoring systems and CCTV and AI and tracking and those kind of things. Of course, the media loves those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure equally there are uses of AI that are saving people's lives, that are ultimately providing greater opportunities for prosperity. But to Paul's question about China, what is your sort of initial response to that?
So Yeah, so I think that AI is neutral, and then what's the problem is how you use AI. No, I think it's like China using internet, and then that's not the internet is bad because China using it. It's more the technology. What I think is important is to see that China has decided to invest a lot on AI, and they want to be the leaders on AI in 2030. And I think this is something that the other countries, they need to think about it, in the sense that maybe AI could be something strategically important, and maybe it's a time to invest on that, to be able to have a good usage of AI. I think that China is really is really more a political discussion on that, because I think that technology in general is neutral. So it's you can use it for good things and bad things, and
Yeah, just on that, I put up our final question for this session, but Albert Cat has put in the chat box there. How can we guarantee potential ethical use of information? So, you know, again, coming back to sort of humans there, have you got a response to that one?
Yeah, so I think that's quite interesting. So this is something that I like the Maori approach of that in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, the Maori culture is really concerned about data sovereignty. So the idea is who owns the data. And this is something that seems maybe not important, but it's really, really important, because remember that AI is based on data. So if you don't have access to data, you cannot build these AI systems. So I think that the fact that in this case, the Maori think that they should own the data, and they are only the ones that can use the data, is something that maybe we can learn on this, no? Because many people are giving for free their personal data, thinking that this is something that is not important. But I think that there is an important ethical issue there, and this is something that as users we need to think about that, because it's not that we are receiving these services for free, no? We are paying with data for these free services, no? So this is something that I think that we really need to think, and to think that at the end we are the owners of the data, and this data can be used in good ways and also in bad ways, but this is something that we should decide what are the usages of this data.
And just on that point, Albert, going back to one of your early sort of case studies in your presentation around Sidewalk Labs and the work that they were doing on the project in Toronto, the Quayside development that is no longer really. One of the good resources that actually came out of that project was a bit of a blueprint for civic data trusts and sort of the governance around data. And one of the premises, and it's a shame it sort of didn't advance that sort of project, because this particular part was of great interest to us, in that the idea behind the Civic Data Trust, for those that haven't gone deep into Civic Data Trusts, is a board of trustees has set up a governance structure with good representation. And one of their key roles is to ensure that who values from the use of that data, that value is spread equitably. Okay, it's not just in the hands of a few that get to benefit from it. So it will be interesting to see over time how sort of intersections with other data-related activation and sort of management sort of approaches intersect with the use of AI. Friends, we're almost done here. I would like to get as much response to this final question as possible. As city shapers, based on what you know or don't know about AI, what we've discussed on this roundtable, this is a really important one, because we're trying to get a sense of where some of the blockers and barriers might be to us as a sort of a city shaping profession, and for policymakers as well, to sort of move this forward. Where do we think, or where do you think, as a sort of a city shaper or urbanist, where do you think the barriers might come, or barriers you might come up against, in terms of having these conversations, advancing the potential opportunities and benefits Is it a lack of business case, lack of just general understanding of AI, not necessarily yours, but your stakeholders maybe, concern over privacy, ethics, governance, don't fully appreciate the opportunity or the use cases of it? Would love to get your responses there. Sarah, you've got your hand up, yes?
Yeah, hi, I realize we're running out of time. I think one of the problems also is let's say you have commissioned as a city shaper or client or whatever, you've commissioned a machine learning model. There are some issues around the moral rights to that model and handing over the IP. So maybe that's something to explore in a further discussion. But when you look at this part of the Copyright Act for Australia, in the moral rights section, is whether or not the model that's been developed, the machine learning model, who does that IP sit with, and how do you transfer that IP? So that was a question, not an answer.
Where does the IP sit, Albert?
Yeah, I think that's something that requires a lot of discussion. But I think it's really important to have these discussions and see how we can decide on these things, because that's really, really important.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm also just responding to Melanie's comment in there around who is driving AI in city shaping and planning at the moment. Is it state or local government, private industry, developers, consultants? We are seeing in particular a lot of local government application, early pilots around asset maintenance, prediction, pavement condition. That seems to be quite sort of the trend at the moment, which actually has a significant bottom line positive impact for local government budgets. But obviously, given our time and what we've gone through, a phase 2 or a sort of a second chapter of this roundtable may be necessary, so we can keep going into more detail. The time is 1 past the hour here. Our time is up. That's gone very quickly. Also a good sense for the level of interest and appetite for this dialogue. So maybe stay tuned. We have a second edition to this dialogue. So with that, I'd like to close, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. Just a reminder that futureofplace.global is where you can go to pick up this recording in the next 24 hours, as well as a whole range of other sort of articles and opportunities to engage around this topic. Albert, wanted to sincerely thank you for joining us, sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
I think it's very clear that this is probably the first of a number of roundtables we'll have on this topic, and certainly look to go and potentially dig out and bring along some more detailed use cases and case studies, and get into a more granular conversation next time as well. This was a great start. We've got some great interest. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Hoping you have a fantastic week, and we'll certainly see you again soon. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.